Prepare to
It's early November. Cold, rainy, around midnight. My fiancé and I like taking spontaneous late-night drives. We typically start out on one of the main roads within our city and keep following it until we hit the next town. Sometimes our drives last hours. The layout of my county and surrounding counties is a little bizarre. All of the cities and towns are isolated by large spreads of woods and country. I live in a relatively large college town, but a half-hour drive in one direction can land you stranded on jagged, unmarked gravel roads in the middle of nowhere, or in a small, weird village that no one knows about. It's actually pretty exciting, and that's why we do it so much. So, it's midnight, and we're nearly lost. Willa, my fiancé, is poking around on my phone, trying to figure out what road we're on. We're on a mud path in a pit of country framed by small towns that we've never heard of. Flory, Winnetka, and Tell or something. There are no other cars on the roads. It's rainy and misty, and the headlights on my car aren't doing a damn thing. There are stands of trees and bushes on either side of the road. We're heading north. She tells me that she thinks we're going to cross 200th Street W, which runs into Rye Road, which is a straight shot to Winnetka. We make our way down the mud road for a half hour and never hit it. We've always had fun on these sorts of drives. It's the first time we've ever really been on edge. Willa says we should have found 200th Street W already and asks if we passed it without noticing. I ask nervously if we should turn around, but she doesn't think we can without backing up into a tree or a ditch. I'm driving a Mazda and it has an awfully wide turn. She's biting her nails while scrolling around on Google Maps. 10 minutes pass, and we finally see a little black road snaking up a hill, branching off of the road we're on. I hurriedly turn into it. It's very narrow, and twigs and branches are raking the doors and windows of the car. When we complete the climb up the little road, we find ourselves in a wide paved clearing with a house at the back of it, tucked into the thick woods. Willa doesn't miss a beat and starts hissing for me to turn around. Our headlights illumine the whole property, which is in major disrepair. No lights, windows shattered, siding and shingles shredded. The yard is littered with scraps and trash. Barrels, car parts, tools, hundreds of glass bottles, branches, slabs of concrete, rocks. Nasty old Chevy pickup. It looks like the house is sitting on top of it all. Every inch of the property is entangled in nets of ivy and weeds. Willa points out little moving shadows and glowing spots around the yard. There are dozens of cats around, and they're all looking at us, and their eyes are glimmering from the headlights. I almost piss myself when a walnut-sized rock darts out of the bush and pops against the windshield. It fractures the glass. Willa screams and grabs my arm. She's whimpering, Danny, what was that? What was that? Oh my god, Dan, what happened? The rain is pouring in black streams down the trees, over the house and across the pavement. All of the blood runs from my face. After a few seconds, a man stumbles out from the bushes and weeds, and he's carrying a fucking shovel. He's swallowed in a big dirty navy coat and has a beard. Then a screen door on the house opens and all the cats scatter. A tall, thin, spidery woman crawls out onto the porch. She has long, wild gray hair. She's just up high enough on the porch that the headlights don't reach her eyes. She wipes her unusually dark hands on her skirt. I have no clue what was on her hands, but that's what I remember most about her, how dark her hands were, and stares at us. Willa is screaming and crying and slapping the door lock repeatedly. I throw the car into reverse, rolling over cinder blocks and branches, and then screech back down the road. After Willa stops crying and there's some distance between us and the house, I start to relax. Yet, when we get out of the woods and hit a long, straight stretch of road, I notice headlights behind us. I get a stomachache when I notice the car is mimicking all of our turns onto different roads. After nearly half an hour of being pursued, we finally reach Flory and pull into a gas station being visited by a few other people. I watch the vehicle pass. It's the same nasty Chevy truck we saw at the house. They stalked us all the way to the next town. We wait till we see the truck disappear down the road before we get out, get some food, and ask for directions. On our way home, I look at the rearview mirror more than I do at the road ahead. When we get back early in the morning, my teeth don't stop chattering until I fall asleep. So, creepy shovel guy and dirty hand cat witch, let's not meet ever again.
I'm a 20-year-old female from the UK. I moved to a university around 6 hours away from my home. I was so scared and excited about the concept of moving, but also worried since my parents were majorly overprotective, which is understandable as the eldest child and only daughter. Fast forward 3 months into my first year, and I'm walking to a nightclub with my friends, which was really fun up until the bouncers told me I had to take 15 minutes. My friends, being as great as per usual, decided to go and wait with me as we sat on the benches next to the club. As I was sat waiting and smiling away at the bouncers, a middle-aged man came and sat next to me, uncomfortably close. My thoughts told me that something wasn't right. I made a gesture to the male bouncer, who was watching him, and made him aware of my discomfort. Whilst doing this, the guy had started to speak to me in a thick foreign accent, which I guessed was more Eastern European. He grabbed out his phone and held it up and asked for my number. I declined and told him that I was okay, to which he started to move closer. He then started loading up his camera and asked to take a picture of me. Before he could press anything, I covered my face and moved so that it was blurred. "Don't take a picture of me," I shouted, and moved away as quickly as I could. Alarm bells were ringing like crazy, and I started to panic. The bouncer had clicked on and came over and grabbed the guy's phone. The next part still creeps me out. Looking through his phone, the bouncer saw a lot of pictures of different girls, and I'm not really sure of their condition, as he turned away in disgust. Then a text came through, and the bouncer stared down at the man. It was in this moment that the creep got up and ran as fast as he could. The bouncer tried to chase this guy and tackle him to the ground but failed. However, he shouted to his work colleagues to phone the police and to do so quickly. They handed over the phone, and I had to give a statement to the police. He was part of a human trafficking ring, and I think I was about to be his next target. So creepy guy who wanted to take my picture, please, let's never meet again.
My sophomore year of high school, my friend was murdered. Going back, freshman year, when I was in homeroom, I became friends with the girl who sat in front of me. Her name was Diana Wright. We came from the same neighborhood and both worked at pizza shops a few blocks away. One night, I remember she had texted me asking if I wanted to do something. This was before everyone had unlimited cell phone plans. I had the Nokia that was basically a brick, and since I had to pay for minutes, we used to text, and if it was short, we could get away with not having to open it, and therefore being charged for the 0.5 minutes. She told me she had a fight with her mom and felt like going out and smoking some weed. I had work and wouldn't be done till we closed up at 1 a.m. Since I needed gas money, I told her I couldn't blow off work, but I might come out afterwards. She sighed and said okay, and to text her when I was done with work to see where she was at, because she didn't decide what she was gonna do yet. At 1:15, I texted her, but didn't get a reply. No big deal, I thought. She probably was asleep. So, Saturday, I text her. Nothing. Sunday, nothing. Again, I thought she was probably grounded. That's why she was mad to begin with. She was grounded and went out, got grounded again, left and went out again. Monday, I came into school and I hear the teacher make an announcement. Sorry to inform you guys, but Diana is missing. Her family has reported her missing after she left and went out and never came home. The teacher said in a despondent tone. My stomach dropped. My fingers tingled. I couldn't believe it. Apparently, that night she ended up hanging out with a guy whom she met working at the pizza shop. Everything was going all right. She was a beautiful girl. She was a model. So, we know what he was thinking. We aren't sure in what order things went down. She was drugged, raped, and strangled. Then, her vile murderer decided to cut her body into pieces, put her in a steel drum, and light her on fire. I think about that night over and over again. Should I have gone? Would that have really made any difference? Or would he have just killed us both? Her father was a FBI agent, so it truly goes to show that if someone is evil and wants to kill you, then nothing, and I mean not a thing, will get in their way. So, Lamar Hames, please, let's not meet.
I am originally from a state that is predominantly hot all year round, and I'm not a big fan of warmer weather. So when winter comes, I like to have my windows open and spend as much time outside as possible. It was one of those chilly winter nights. I was around 10 years old and the only people home were my two nannies and me. They were on the other side of the house watching TV as I was in my room. It was getting late, and likely around about 10 p.m. So I decided to take a shower and hop into bed. Everything's fine. I hop out of the shower and get ready for bed. At this point I should quickly go over the layout of my room. It's rectangular and has two windows facing the front door entrance to my house. From my windows, you can see a walkway to the front door, and the path is sort of gated in brick. Basically, you'd have to enter the driveway, turn left, and walk down a path that leads to my front door. A bed faces one of those windows, and I can see all the way down the path. Both windows have a mesh on the screen. This is where things get crazy. Like I mentioned before, I had the windows facing my bed open to let the cold air in. My room was so well lit that it's hard to see anything through the window. However, as soon as I turned off the light, I could see the figure of a man with his face pressed upon the screen. In that moment, I felt his piercing gaze. He was motionless and smiling. He had facial hair that looked as if his whole face were covered in fur. I briefly thought I was imagining this and was seeing something that wasn't there because of all the foliage outside my window. I had taken a couple of quick steps towards the window to get a look before I confirmed what I saw was real. This all happened in a matter of 10 seconds. I bolted out my room and towards my nanny's room. The hallways in my house are long and narrow with large windows that face the entrance. I didn't dare look out. I reached the room which my nannies resided in to tell them what happened, and they just laughed. To be quite honest, I was the boy who cried wolf. I was always a prankster and a bit imaginative, so it could be hard to take me seriously when I was younger. I had to beg them to come and check with me, and from what I can remember they took it seriously. We get to my room, and of course no one's there. My window screen is left untouched, and the man is gone. I don't think they were totally convinced, and neither were my parents. I couldn't sleep in my room for days though because of the incident. My house didn't even have an alarm system, so there was nothing stopping this person from coming back. I'm still very disappointed in how things were handled, and had no power over anything. I have no idea how long that guy was out there for, and if he was watching me undress or dress myself after. I remember how messed up his smile was. It was menacing. I'm glad I wasn't harmed by this guy, and I really hope it was his only visit. I stopped opening my windows at night, and I missed the cool winter air. So creepy guy with your face pressed against my window screen? Let's never meet.
This particular event happened almost a year ago, sometime in mid-October. A couple friends and I drove out to visit an old friend of ours from high school, George, who now lived about an hour out of the city. We spent the whole day with him, and it was really late when we finally decided to start the drive back home. My friend Liza was passed out in the passenger seat. She had had a few drinks and decided to spend the ride home asleep. My other friend Sam was sitting in the back seat behind Liza and was playing a game on her smartphone. I, of course, was driving. I was following the GPS's instruction back to the freeway. At that moment, we were driving down a dark street with thick trees bordering both sides. Everything was pretty peaceful, with the only sounds I could hear being that of the car moving along the road and the radio on low volume. Suddenly, my car let out a loud jolt and it felt as if I had hit something. Sam let out a shocked scream while Liza remained dead asleep. I slammed on the brakes and the car came to a halt. I was breathing heavily when I asked what the hell had just happened. Sam peered through the back window and gasped. She turned to me with an angry look on her face and shouted that I had just hit a dog. I looked through the back window and, sure enough, a dog was lying in the road a few yards behind the car. Sam is a pretty big animal lover, so I wasn't surprised to see her get pissed at me. She was about to open her door and rush to the animal's aid when I stopped her. Once I had gotten over the shock of running over a dog, I got a feeling in my gut that told me that something was off. I'm no braggart, but I consider myself to be a very attentive and safe driver. My eyes were on the road at all times, and I distinctly remember not seeing any dog in the road prior to the car jolting. Yes, it was dark, but I was sure that I would have at least seen the dog in the headlights before hitting it. I looked through the back window and took a closer look at the dog, or at least as much as I could make out in the reddish light coming from my taillights. It was a fairly big dog, at least a golden retriever or something like that. One particular detail caught my attention. I could see the dog's tail wagging. Now, I'm no expert on the mannerisms of animals, but I was sure the last thing a dog would do after being hit by a car would be to wag its tail. After a moment of thought, I pressed my foot down on the accelerator and sped off. Sam snapped at me and ordered me to go back, but I told her that something was wrong with the whole situation. She continued to argue, but she fell silent as she turned back towards the back window. She asked, "What the heck?" with a shaken voice. I looked in the rearview mirror. Though it was dark, I was able to make out the silhouettes of 3 large figures emerging from the trees on the side of the road. The dog was now up on its feet and jumping around joyfully. The 3 figures looked in our direction as I pressed my foot down on the gas harder and sped off. Sam and I remained silent for the rest of the ride home. It wasn't until a few days later that we told Liza about it. We've been back to visit George a few times since then, but we always make sure to leave before sunset. Still, I dread to think about what would have happened if we had gotten out of the car. It's in the dustiest books that you may find the best stories.